4 months from now, when the dust is settled, everybody will be talking about the biggest upsets we saw in college football this year. As far as I'm concerned, you can nominate and already vote for number one, Kansas, a 20-point dog, winning outright at Boston College in Chestnut Hill last night. I mean, Kansas doesn't beat anybody, let alone winning on the road, let alone winning as a 20-point underdog, let alone winning against a Power 5 club. And then look at how Kansas did it. I mean, this is a team that just lost outright last Saturday at home, 12-7 to Coastal Carolina. And in a span of 1 week, Kansas basically scraps its entire offense. Instead of seeing all the power run formations, all the I formations, instead you're seeing 3 wide receiver sets. You're seeing all these RPOs. You're seeing them run elements of the spread. What did Cliff Kingsbury take the week off and abandon the Cardinals and come to Lawrence last night? No. Listen, if Les Miles had trusted his offensive coordinators years ago, he might still be the LSU head coach, because that's all they wanted in Baton Rouge. They wanted to bring the offense into the new century. They were tired of seeing him just run the ball up the middle. Oh, hey, it's 3rd down. Let's run the ball up the middle again. Oh, hold it. It's 3rd and 7. Let's run the ball up the middle again. They were tired of seeing that in Baton Rouge. And that's what they saw in the first 2 weeks in Lawrence as well. But in a span, and think about this, it was a short week. It was a travel week. They basically revamped their entire offense. The Boston College defensive coaches must have come out there last night. And when they saw that Kansas offense take the field and start running their plays, they must have thought, what the hell did we game plan for? This isn't the team we saw on film for the first 2 weeks of the season. This is a different team playing in the Kansas uniforms. But I mean, what an amazing turnaround in less than a week for that Kansas team, who now, of course, goes home and has a potentially winnable game against West Virginia. But hey, they got 2 wins this season. They may not win another game, but at least they got a big one under their belts. Okay, listen, I've got a couple of complimentary plays with my thoughts on an early game between another team from Kansas, this one from Manhattan, Kansas State, going into Starkville today, taking on Mississippi State. As for me last night, I looked at that game up and down, and I was not about to lay 20 points with Boston College. I had some trepidation there because of BC's defense. Instead, I went down to Tobacco Road and picked up a Raise the Bar 29 winner on Wake Forest last night. And I'm going to come right back with another Raise the Bar 29 play today, only the 14th ever in all the years I've been doing this site in college football. And it is on the game going at 3:30 Eastern Time today between Central Florida and Stanford. And you get it as the half-price play of the day. It's college football winner number 9 out of 12 overall, going back to the last season. And you get it for half price simply by using coupon code RAISE, R-A-I-S-E. And to put it in perspective, when I had a top-rated 15-dime play on Clemson crushing Alabama in the national championship game, it was nice. This play is stronger. All the other discount codes and promos are over on the homepage. Let's get with it in terms of your complimentary plays. On the card today, one of the games I find very interesting. It's a team that I gave you as a free play last Saturday, SMU, and revenge against North Texas. I'm willing to come right back with the ponies today, laying the 17.5 points against Texas State. A nice start of the season for SMU. First as a 4.5-point road dog. They rallied in the second half and won at Arkansas State 37-30. Then last week, 49-27 over North Texas, a game that, trust me, was not even that close as the final score would indicate. Last week they got the ground game going. Xavier Jones, their senior running back, 164 yards, 3 touchdowns, now 6 rushing touchdowns on the season. Shane Buechele, of course, the transfer from Texas, 292 yards, 3 touchdowns in the game against the Mean Green. He's completing 63.8% of his passes so far this season for an SMU offense that has amassed over 500 yards in total offense in each of the first 2 games, seeking the first 3-0 start in the program since 1984, which probably, I'm just guessing, probably were from the days of Eric Dickerson and Craig James, I'm thinking, if memory serves me correctly. As for this Texas State team, opened the season with a 41-7 loss to Texas A&M in College Station, and that was a charitable loss because the Aggies really took their foot off the accelerator. Then lost at home, 23-14 to Wyoming. Texas State last year was one of the most poorly performing offenses in all of Division I ball. And nothing has changed this year. So I think that SMU is going to be a team that's going to be on an attack mode nonstop. Could it be a letdown situation because they're coming off that big revenge win against North Texas? Yes. But with the game being in Dallas and with the way their offense is designed to constantly be on the attack mode all times, I don't have any qualms with laying the points. It's my second favorite play on the board today. Another game that I like is Nebraska. Scott Frost has a problem with his Cornhuskers. As we saw last week, they only play about 2.5 to 3 quarters. They were sluggish in their home opener against South Alabama, 35-21. Then last week, they go up 17-0 at Colorado. Allowed only 8 first downs on 115 total yards to the Buffaloes in the first 41 minutes of that game. Thereafter, 349 yards, and eventually lose the game 34-31 in overtime. Now, you may recall, it was back in 2017. Northern Illinois comes into Lincoln, becomes the first non-Power 5 conference team, and major independent to win in Lincoln in 13 years when they pulled the 21-17 upset, which is one of the reasons Scott Frost is now the head coach of the Cornhuskers. The Huskies last week, though, went to Utah. They were down by 4 at halftime. Eventually, number 12 Utah pulled away in the second half, shut Northern Illinois out, won that game 35-17. I think the fact that they're on the road for a second straight week, the fact that Nebraska collapsed in the second half at Colorado plays well into laying the points here with the Cornhuskers. I think that we're getting Nebraska at a bargain basement price. If they had won last week and held on at Colorado, I think instead of laying a couple of touchdowns, we would probably be laying 18, 19, maybe even 20 points. So we are getting Nebraska at a discount here. At times, the Nebraska defense has been really good, opportunistic. 7 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions, 2 of those takeaways returned for touchdowns. Of the 55 points Nebraska's allowed in the first 2 games, 48 of them have come in the final 30 minutes. Again, it's those late collapses that have cost Nebraska money against South Alabama and the win against Colorado. So I'm willing to lay the points with Nebraska, again, at what I consider as a discounted price. The other game I want to quickly talk about is the game that kicks off at noon Eastern Time in Starkville. It's Kansas State, a 7-point dog. They were 9 earlier in the week, dropped down to 7. Now, you may remember week 2 last season. I remember because I had Mississippi State in this one. Mississippi State goes in Manhattan, and they just destroyed Kansas State. They ran for 384 yards. Averaged 9.8 yards per carry, used their big offensive line to just run wild against Kansas State. Outgained them 538 to 213 with Nick Fitzgerald at quarterback. Well, actually, you know what? No, I do think Nick Fitzgerald did play in that game. Well, now they've got Tommy Stevens at quarterback. He left Penn State to rejoin Joe Moorhead, who at one time had been, up until a year ago, the Penn State offensive coordinator. Now, Stevens has played well. He did leave last week's game against Southern Mississippi at halftime, but he declares himself okay for this game and is expected to start the contest. Mississippi State has scored 38 points in back-to-back wins against Louisiana and Southern Miss. As for Kansas State, they hired Chris Kleiman to replace Bill Snyder, who retired for a second time. The former came from North Dakota State. He believes in, it's almost like hockey. He believes in putting in waves of players offensively. They had 9 different running backs touch the ball in last week's rout of Bowling Green. They also blew out an FCS school, Nicholls State, in week number 1. They've beaten those 2 teams by a combined score of 101-14. So let's say they've had charitable competition so far, and they've hosted both of these teams. They've run for 694 yards in the first two games, amassed over 500 yards total offense in the first two games. Skylar Thompson, veteran quarterback, coming back. He's completed 74% of his passes thus far. Interesting thing here in terms of the look ahead. Mississippi State opens SEC play next week by hosting Kentucky. Kansas State has no look ahead. They have a bye game. It's a revenge situation for them. I do think Kansas State can hang with them in this game. The only thing that worries me here, if you had given me that 9.5 number I'd gotten earlier in the week, I'd be all over Kansas State and recommending them as a play here. But now that the line has dropped to 7, even though I could possibly buy up to half point, I have to stay away from the contest. But I had handicapped the game, and I figured I'd pass on my notes here. What worries me here, once more, is that Mississippi State still has that very good offensive line. Not quite as good as last year, but still a damn good offensive line. They still have the running back, Kylan Hill, who last year in Manhattan ran for a career-high 211 yards. And so far this year, through 2 games, leads the SEC in rushing with 320 yards. So, all things being said, now that the line has dropped, I'd flip sides and go and more lean toward Mississippi State. And if I'm flipping sides, that means I really shouldn't be playing the game. That's probably how you should feel as well. So your official free plays, once again, I like SMU a lot at home, and I like Nebraska and Lincoln as well. Good luck, everybody. Talk to you again tomorrow.